Hi everybody, and once again, welcome back to another episode of our journey down the road to somewhere. And if you happen to be joining us for the first time, glad to have you with us. We're on this trip down Route 66 with Joy and John, who are filming a series of videos to go with the teaching videos that I'll talk about a little bit later. But we're on the fourth leg of our trip. We actually are in Oklahoma on Route 66, and we're in what are called the minor prophets, each stop on Route 66 having a specific book that is attached to it. And this week you can kind of see again that we've been through four legs of the journey, which we've kind of referred to as seasons, and we're in the eighth episode again of this season, and we're going to be heading towards Stroud, Oklahoma, and our minor prophet that we're going to be looking at is the book of Amos. If you are joining us, what happens at each of these little stops on in the book, which I'm walking you through, the road to somewhere, is that John and Joy, they do a little video that gives a little bit of background about the town on Route 66, and then kind of a quick little overview of the book that's attached, with the hope that in the book, the hope that the audience that's watching the videos then will go to the teaching video, which is what my hope is for you. And so we've just come from Sapulpa, Oklahoma, and we're kind of heading toward the middle of the state now. And today we're coming down the road about 40 miles to Stroud. And on this little stretch of the road in the book, Joy takes the wheel of their modified 66 Corvette Roadster and drives this little piece of the road until they pull into Stroud. When they get to Stroud, or I kind of think maybe even along the way, Joy is kind of updating John a little bit about the town. The town actually is pretty small. It's about 2,700 population. And it really has kind of one main attraction, which is a cafe that is called Rock Cafe. It's a cafe that Joy wants to shoot at. And in the book, Joy kind of briefs John a little bit. The cafe was actually built out of local limestone that was dug up when they were building Route 66. And the restaurant itself opened in 1939, and back in the day, before the interstate, it was a pretty big Route 66 stop because it was just about halfway between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, which are the two largest towns in Oklahoma. In 1993, a lady by the name of Dawn Welch bought the cafe and really restored it and brought it back to some of its original glory, I guess. And in 2001, kind of interesting story, there's a lot more about this on the teaching video, by the way. John Lasseter and the Pixar crew were traveling Route 66 to kind of look for ideas and scenes for their movie Cars. And they stopped here at Rock Cafe and they met Dawn. And they were so impressed with her and how engaging she was that they actually based a character in the movie on her. And she, in the movie, the character is a Porsche called Sally Carrera. And if you look at the longer video, you'll see how inside the Rock Cafe they have a lot of memorabilia from that movie. So Joy has called ahead and asked Dawn if it'd be okay if they shoot a video here. And of course, Dawn has said, yeah, that would be great. So in the video, as they're shooting it, again, they go outside. Joy wants to get a little bit of the exterior of the cafe and along. There's supposed to be a really cool neon sign there. She wants to get that in the video too. And in the video, again, you can kind of see some very cool Cars memorabilia. But the video begins with John, as usual, kind of giving a short introduction to the town of Stroud itself, a little bit of its background. And then he tells the story of Rock Cafe and, again, how it ties into the movie Cars. And after he does that, he segues into the book that is matched up with this particular stop, and that is the minor prophet Amos. Amos is fascinating, and there's a lot of interesting things about Amos. I'll scratch the surface, but again, this is one of those books that it'll be real important for you to watch the teaching video also. First of all, Amos isn't a classic prophet. When he introduces himself in the first verse, he tells us this: the words of Amos, one of the shepherds of Tekoa, the vision he saw concerning Israel 2 years before the earthquake, when Uzziah was king of Judah and Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, was king of Israel. So again, one of the things that's interesting is that Amos, he identifies himself, although God is giving him this message, he's not a classic prophet like some of the others. He identifies himself, actually the word that's translated shepherds in the NIV would more be like the word herdsman. Someone that didn't just take care of the sheep, but actually raised sheep and cattle and sold them. And a little bit later on in the text, he also talks about the fact that he takes care of sycamore fig trees. And so, what I really envision him is that he is sort of a classic businessman of the era, and yet God calls him to deliver this prophecy. Many scholars believe, and again, remember, the prophets are not arranged chronologically. They're really arranged in terms of the length of the book. And many scholars believe that perhaps that Amos was the very first of what they call the writing prophets. You might remember that, clear back, probably the first prophets that we, ran into, in the Old Testament really didn't write. We simply saw their message that came within a book. And yet now, if Amos began to write his prophecies, he set the stage then for the rest of the prophets to do the same. The scholars date this potentially around 755 BC, and his focus primarily is going to be on the northern kingdom of Israel, although he also has some words from God for Judah also. But he is actually coming from the southern kingdom, and we think that the town of Tekoa was about 10 miles south of Jerusalem, about 5 miles south of Bethlehem, and kind of interesting, by the way, just as an aside, again, if he had to do with the sheep business or shepherding in some way, this could have been the area that when Jesus was born, where shepherds would have received the announcement about the birth of Christ. But he primarily is sending this message. He leaves Tekoa, and again, he is going to go up into the northern kingdom to what we call Bethel, and from there he is going to give his prophecy. He would have been a contemporary in some ways, even if he was the first or the earliest of the prophets. He would have been a contemporary of Isaiah and Hosea and Joel. They were all around that same time in the 8th century BC. But he's going to warn the north about this coming attack. And of course, that would probably be the attack in 722 when Assyria really destroyed the northern kingdom and took its citizens into exile. So when we talked about pre-exile prophets and the exile prophets and post-exile, he would have been one of the pre-exile prophets, actually pre-exile of the northern kingdom. So again, quite early. His message is pretty bleak. It is a message of destruction of the northern kingdom and captivity, much like is the case in some of the other minor prophets. And one of the things that he does is he systematically in the book, he begins to point to each of these areas where God's judgment is ultimately going to come. And so there's 8 different areas that he speaks to. And the final really is Judah and Jerusalem, so he does have a message for the south also. One of the things that we know about this particular time in the history of the northern kingdom, and in the book Road to Somewhere, this is one of the things that John points out, is that this was a prosperous time in the north. As a matter of fact, Jeroboam II, which was the king of the north that Amos identifies, had kind of conquered some of the surrounding areas. So there's actually parts of these nations that now have become part of the kingdom of Israel. But it was a time both of sort of wealth and prosperity, but it also was a time of injustice. And this is one of the areas that the prophet Amos is going to speak to. He makes reference to these wealthy women of the northern kingdom, and he calls them the cows of Bashan. And again, basically he talks about an indictment against them that at least part of their wealth and their prosperity has come, and the words that he uses is that you've crushed the needy and you have oppressed the poor. And so the kind of 3 major issues that he speaks to the people, that God wants to say to the people about, are, first of all, our idolatry, that they have drifted away. And of course, the northern kingdom, from its beginnings back in 930 BC, they had set up their own religious system. They had their own idols. They had their own priesthood. They even had their own temple. And so idolatry had been really a part of the history of this kingdom anyway. And with idolatry usually came immorality. There were fertility deities that they worshipped, and immorality was actually part of the worship of those deities. And then what Amos really adds quite a bit of emphasis to is that the third issue would be injustice. So if you can remember those 3 I's, and I think I speak about this in the teaching video of immorality, idolatry, and injustice, you'll know what the issue is here in the book of Amos. In the video, a couple of the highlights, one of the things that we read on a number of occasions in the book is that when the message is given about what God has done to try and turn the people around, Amos writes, I think 5 different times, "Yet you have not returned to me." And one of the big messages of the book in terms of trying to correct what's happening there is that God says to them, "Seek me." And if they seek him, he will restore them. There's that promise there. And part of what seeking him should look like is dealing with injustice. And this is the book where a very famous quote comes from. On August 23rd, 1963, Martin Luther King Jr., we just observed his holiday last week. Martin Luther King Jr. in his I Have a Dream speech, he quotes from the book of Amos, and he quotes the verse that says, "But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. And then in the video, the longer teaching video, part of what you'll see is how if they will seek God and if they will let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream, then God is going to restore them and bring back those that go into captivity. And so John gives this little, kind of a teaser almost to encourage his audience to go and watch that teaching video. In the book, John and Joy then go into Rock Cafe, to say goodbye to Dawn, and then the two of them head off toward their next stop, which will be Oklahoma City, the largest city in Oklahoma on Route 66. And when we look at that next week, we're actually going to look at two prophets. We're going to combine two. So next week is sort of a 2-for-1 time together. So hopefully you'll join us then. And in the meantime, you make sure to watch that teaching video of Amos. So thanks for being with us today. You have links to the teaching video, or even down in the left-hand corner of this video, there'll be a link to get you to that longer teaching video. So we'll see you next week.